Hey, ladies and gentlemen, looking at another weather event that's coming up on Sunday, the 24th. You can see it here in the convection outlooks, and we're gonna go over it here. Day two, it also looks like we got a little bit of that startup for that convection that's gonna happen. So, you know how I do it. This is one of those days where it's just a very good day for chasers, very bad day for everybody else. This is gonna be kind of a hard weekend for everybody a little bit in this area of the country. So we're gonna take a look at the facts here. Same as every video, I have not looked at the data yet, so we're going to look over the data for the first time and see exactly all the details of what is going into this. Okay, so this is for today. Well, actually, last night, this day one, well, prior day one outlook. This is the day one outlook for right now as it stands. And so this is the new outlook as of this morning. You can see not too much threat out here. A little bit of wind going on, maybe some hail threats that's going on. There's a lot of cooling out here, a lot of cold fronts associating and going east across the country. So as these cold fronts keep, kind of pushing everything through, you got this big, humongous. Uh, I guess you would call it a big, humongous mess of just cold that's just pushing all the heat and the moisture out of the country. It's just kind of going all the way down here, just pushing all the warm out. So that's where you're getting a little bit of these attributed hail warnings and stuff like that going up. These little areas of hail where they're possible. Okay, so and then tomorrow, tomorrow. This would be Saturday. Then we're looking at about a little bit of that weather event that's starting to kick up a little bit. The only thing is, I don't think Saturday is going to be much of a big day for weather. And the only reason why is because there's a lot of daytime heating that's going on in this area over here, and there's still a lot of pressure here. So I think that most of the cap is going to stay. It's going to stay pretty solid for a little while until we get into Sunday when this moves a little bit further east, and then you can see on Sunday its position now where it widens out, and then the caps start to pop as it kind of gets into that upper Mississippi Valley, into Missouri, northern Louisiana, Arkansas, these areas right here where you're getting a little bit more of that moisture and then daytime heating on top of that. So with all that heating and all that moisture that's going up there, that's when you're going to get those caps breaking. You're going to get things, moving in the works. All right, so this is a day three categorical outlook from the National Weather Service, though. There's a lot of changes that can happen between now and Sunday. But the fact of the matter is they already put an enhanced risk up on a day three outlook. So that tells you this is a serious event. This is something to pay attention to because they already have an enhanced risk. They usually don't do that, not 3 days out. Anyways, they usually don't do that 3 days out unless they are sure that this is going to be kind of a danger zone for severe hazards. As I read, the only thing I have done before this video is I read the description of what is going on, and this is something that they say all weather hazards are going to be possible here. Tornadoes, got hail, got high winds. Bulk shear is already going to be at 50 knots by the time that this reaches this area. 2,000 joules of surface cape. You know what I mean? So a lot of instability is going into this right now, and that's the reason for this enhanced risk, is because they see a great potential for severe hazards on Sunday, the 24th of October. This is going to be happening somewhere it could be happening as early as like the mid-afternoon to the evening of Sunday. They don't know what's going to happen. That is the unpredictable part because they don't know how the cap is going to react. If it's gonna pop a little bit earlier in eastern Oklahoma and eastern Kansas, or if it's going to hold out and it's going to wait until it gets further east. All right, until it gets into this enhanced risk area. But they do know. I would assume that they would know by the time that it reaches this zone, enhanced risk, you're already going to have storms rolling out and becoming serious. All right, so this is the time frame where you have to be weather aware. You have to know what's going on by this time. That's probably going to be kind of later afternoon to evening hours is probably when it's going to be this far east. All right, so this is the probabilistic outlook. You can see that 10% hatched in area. That is a 10% additional risk for severe weather at that point. And they haven't broken up the categories like in the other convection outlooks, tornado, wind, hail, and all that. So I'm assuming that this is probably going to be the area for the highest level of trouble. I'm sorry, the highest level of trouble here in Missouri. So, and then a little bit there in northern Arkansas, it looks like. So as soon as and usually I've seen these kind of systems happen coming out of Kansas and Oklahoma before, where the cap kind of holds out. The daytime heating just further it just makes the atmosphere like so unstable. And then that daytime heating, as the cap kind of blows to the east, it doesn't break until later when it gets into a more moist kind of temperature, which anybody who spent a little time in Missouri, I spent time there during the military in the summer, and I tell you what, it was one of the most humid, wettest places I've ever been. And you guys have some serious heat out there. So you got heat, you got moisture, probably even in the later times of the year. I've never lived there, so I don't know in the later times of the year how the humidity and the moisture is, but I'm assuming it's probably pretty moist. You know what I mean? A little bit more moist than what you get out in the desert areas, or even the Northeast, where it's nice and cold. You probably still have a little bit more heat and moisture there. That's going to enable those caps to really, really ramp up. It's a break, and those storms gonna come out. So they were saying that these storms are likely to form lines of multicellular systems, where you're going to have the potential for a system and lines of supercells being formed up. So that's going to be, to me, it means that you might have some training systems. For those of you who don't know what a training system is, one cell follows another on the same track, the same path. They just follow one after another. And that's called training. So that's what I'm kind of worried about, is training systems where the same locations might get hit once or twice, or even 3 times in some instances, where you're having the same places being damaged, and you're having them get hit again and again from these training systems coming out. And I hope it's not one of those situations, but definitely have to be ready for something like that. Let's go to tornado tracking. This is just the current outlooks for right now. You see those marginal risks that's going on right there for some high winds and a little bit of hail out here. Not too much going on right now. This is for tomorrow. You see that little 2% risk there for some tornado activity. If you do get tornadoes out there, which it's very unlikely, I think, at this point, but if you do get them out there, they're probably going to be on the lower end. They're going to be brief little spin-ups, not very long-lived, and they're going to, eventually just kind of blow out of there and go away. Because there is still a pretty solid cap there. That's why I don't think that there's going to be too much action as far as that's concerned. So pretty wide cap there. Still got some high pressure out here to the west at Colorado, up in Wyoming, almost in Idaho there. Still got some high pressure systems moving through. But you do have some outflow boundary lines here and some cold and warm fronts moving in through. Then you see these lows right here. And once these lows move in to the east here, that's when you're going to start to have problems. And that's what we're going to see later on this weekend, towards the end of the weekend here. All right, now you see that plume here of just cold, cold air that is pushing out all of this warm stuff. You know what I mean? Everything that's warm right here, it's just pushing it on through. And so now you can see what I was talking about. And it's going to be kind of just rolling to the east, where you see that curvature right there. So it's just kind of pushing it all into Florida, and then it's going to push it off into the Atlantic and kind of upwards northeast. So it's going to kind of bend, like a smiley face almost. All right, now you can see those moisture. Let's see these dew points here. I mean, look out here, 50s, 40s, and in dew points, it's already pretty wet. You know what I mean? So that's what I was talking about. You got a pretty dry conditions out here in the west, and that's coming with that cold weather that's over here. But it's still got some pretty adamant moisture that's here. Which is going to take probably a few days for all that moisture to push out of there with the attributed cold weather, and it might warm up as it moves further into the south anyways, because the south is always closer to the equator. You're always getting those warmer temperatures. So That's gonna, one of those situations. But if these dew points stick around, which the National Weather Service is anticipating dew points around 60s to 70s. So by the time this storm event comes, that's pretty thick dew points. It's a lot of instability going up there. They already got Kate that's kind of showing up here in Texas, about 1,000. This is probably going to, by the time the weather event on Sunday occurs, this is probably going to spike and then, kind of blow east with all of the storms and the Supercell Composite that's probably going to come through here. Got some wind shear that's kind of moving into Missouri already at 50s and 60s. 70s later on in the bulk wind shear. It's enough wind to get things spinning up as soon as these storms roll through. So got a few days to see what exactly happens and how it kind of participates. Right now you got no surface vortice in this area right here, but you can see these little spikes of surface vortice. This is over the Gulf and everything, which that's not uncommon. But this is the way that, this is here. This is probably going to spike in the next couple of days, the same as the surface cape, and that is going to be a totally different picture by the time these storms run through. All right, Supercell Composite. Like I said, this is live data. We don't have much going on right now. You can see a little bit of that Supercell Composite that's going on there, and that's right in that area where that 2% risk is for a little bit of tornado threat tomorrow. And so that's just going to kind of hang around a little bit until things get started moving further east later on in the weekend. Tornado parameter is just not even there. So that's all the live data that we have looking at right here. But let's go to the models now. And we will look at, first we'll look at GFS, and then we'll just kind of bounce around to different models and see what we're looking at here. All right, so okay, so we're looking at today right now on the 22nd, and let's blow through and see how this kind of participates, see the big picture here. So you can see this system moving in from the northwest. All right, so let's actually, let me see here, the 23rd, let's just skip to the later hours of the 23rd, and then move through. So 18Z, the 23rd. Okay, so now, all right, so this is early in the day of the 24th. Now at 15Z, we're moving towards the afternoon. Okay, hold on a second. All right, so these, all right, so these little cells that are popping up here, this is early overnight hours of the 25th at that time. So this is earlier in the day. It seems like this one isn't really in agreement because it's not showing what, it's not really showing what the National Weather Service is showing here. It's got a marginal tornado risk here. I mean, just kind of looking at this, we got a nice hydrograph, we got some hail threat, we got, minimum supercell risk, low end tornado threat with this. Cap is broken, we got moisture going up into the air, we got a significant, good amount of heat that's going on. LCL is pretty low and a stable wind field, but I don't see that curvature in the wind field right here, which really tells me how decent the spin up is. Our wind barbs are pretty, a lot of wind, but they're not really spread out. When you have these wind bars that are spread out almost like a windmill, you know what I mean? The more they're spread, the higher the threat really for tornadoes. And I mean, the hydrograph here, you got a little bit of that hook kind of feature in here with the critical angle. So that kind of gives me an idea of what the vortice is going to be like and the chances for some tornado threat. But it's not as impressive through GFS. So let's go to the NAM model. And okay, so the NAM model is showing something a little different. Let's go back to the late hours of the 23rd. All right, and then continue on into the 24th. Okay, now we're getting into the early 24th here. Okay, so you're already having a little bit of that instability on the 24th in the earlier hours before the afternoon when this all kind of kicks up. Now you can see that wind barb spread out a little bit more. So that kind of tells me it's cranking up. Okay, it isn't there yet. This is the early time for it to begin, but this is cranking up. You're getting that curvature that I was talking about in the wind field here, and it's kind of a nice stable wind field, you know. It's not a harsh wind, but it's, you know, it's pretty decent. It's not bad, and it's stable. You know what I mean? For the most part, anyways. Get a little bit of disturbance here on the surface. But we got a lot of moisture that's going up into the air right here, and that moisture is what I was talking about. When you have these higher indices of moisture going up into the atmosphere, that's going to break all that up and enable those caps in order to break. You know, right now it seems like it isn't really broken yet. The cap's still holding out. That's what the NAM is showing me. See how tight those two are together. But let's go a couple of frames, and then you'll probably see a different picture here. Let's take a look right behind this line as it moves through northern Missouri. Then you're getting that significant hail risk. Cap is still holding out, though. You still got that stable wind field and a lot of moisture going up into the air. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, so now this tail is kind of stuck out now. So let's take a look at this. This is at the 18Z hour. We're going to take a look right ahead of this line and see what it looks like now. So now you can see that cap is broken. Okay, so now you're seeing that tornado risk where you got some significant supercell development, you got some significant hail development, some supercell in there. Cap is broken. Not much of a curvature in the wind field, but you got stable wind. So you got enough wind shear in here in order to get things moving, but the wind barbs are pretty narrow. Got moisture and heat going in there. This is the buildup segment. You know, essentially the I guess you would call it the calm before the storm, where it's, you know, it's kind of the storm. This you know, this atmosphere and this weather is starting to try to organize, and it's you know, it's kind of beginning. Like, okay, you know, getting into a you know, an environment where it's good for me. Now I'm going to start rolling out to play. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what these storms are looking like they're doing here. Hydrograph looks okay. You know, got some critical angle in there with that little bit of that hook. I mean, the way that you want this to look is kind of like a, you know, kind of like a basic storm structure, you know what I mean, where you're having that hook in there and everything, and then it just kind of, you know, looks like a storm structure in here, essentially. But, you know, a little bit of a critical angle right here in that kind of hooking kind of look like there in the hydrograph, but then it gets kind of meshed up right here. Got a marginal tornado risk with this. You know, supercell development is looking good. And I mean, I think that this is the time in the, you know, in the storm where the supercells are building and they're starting to form. And they really haven't gotten ramped up yet. So, and then the next frame shows this big squall line. This is a big squall line of storms, and this is probably going to be the peak time for this, which that is the 21Z hour. So, all right, so that is something that's concerning, because anywhere along this line, when you have thin lines of storms like this, you can have embedded supercells, and you're going to have tornadoes popping off anywhere on this line, really. But I would assume that from about middle Missouri on down is going to be the higher problematic areas. Northern Missouri, I wouldn't put too much faith into being that bad, or going up into Illinois. I mean, maybe a little bit on the southern end of Illinois if you have anything popping up on the northern end of this line. Usually they form more on the southern end of this line, though. Not in every case, though. Sometimes it's an isolated incident here. But let's click and look at our hydrographs right just ahead of that line in Missouri. Got a broken cap, not much of a broken cap, but a broken cap. Got a spike in moisture going up into the air. You got some pretty decent, you know, fairly decent wind that's going on in there. Wind barbs are pretty thin right there. Significant hail. Got some supercell development. It's not very strong, but good looking hydrograph. So let's see. Let's look a little bit further down into Arkansas. And let's check out Arkansas. Now you're getting that tornado risk. So that's what I was talking about. Seems like further down and south in the line is where it's going to be a little bit more intense. It's going to be a little bit stronger, and that's usually the way that it works. Hydrograph looks good. Got a nice big hooking system in there. Got a storm structure that's breaking off. It looks like east-southeast. Got the cap. That is broken here. Got moisture and heat going up into the air. Got all the ingredients, all the accoutrement for storms to build up here. You got nice, big, stable wind fields. So you're getting that significant wind shear in there to really get this ramping up and get storms spinning. LCL is very low. So when you get that LCL below 1 kilometer, that's going to be supportive in that instability for storms to roll out. All right, and this is all on the surface there. You got some nice wind barbs here. They're not very spread out, but it's a high wind shear. And that's really all that you need in order to get these really ramping up. You got high indices of supercell development. CAPE is sitting out at 1562 in surface CAPE, which is more than enough, you know, for tornadoes and storms to roll out. Got some hail threat that's going to be there with that significant supercell development. And I mean, this is just a generality of what kind of tornadoes could be possible in the area. Usually it doesn't happen like this. I mean, you know, they'd say, oh, you know, all the way up to F3. It doesn't mean that you're going to have F3s. It just means that tornadoes are going to be possible to develop in this area. Don't let this thing scare you. And usually the NAM always looks worse than the high resolution model. So, and it's just, you know, and okay, so lines of storms. This is what the National Weather Service was talking about. It's multiple squall lines of storms. A lot of these Boeing features in here, which tells me that the winds are going to be legendary in this area. You're going to have the potential for very high winds ahead of these squall lines with this bending and bowing feature right here, just ahead of the line. Not actually on the line, but just ahead of it. I would say about maybe 2 miles at max ahead of this line, maybe even more, maybe about 5 miles. That's when that wind is going to start, and it's really going to crank up ahead of this line. It's not going to die down until after it's already passed, and that's if you don't have another line coming. So, but the way that this is isolated, you get these little pop-up cells here. I mean, these little things, you know what I mean? It's just one right out, you know, one after another right down this line here. Any one of these could be a supercell. Or they could have embedded supercells in them. They're very isolated. They're very spotty. You know, you just get these spots. This is, you know, this is the bad kind of instance where you're getting those storms. You're getting those really high-end severe weather. So I'm going to look right in the middle here, just ahead in kind of mid to southern Missouri, and see what it looks like. All right, so NAM is calling out a particularly dangerous situation in Missouri. Okay, so, and we're going to look at some other models so that we can get a little bit more of a clear understanding of what is going on. Like I said, don't let the NAM model fool you. I just use it for forecasting models to see what, you know, what's really going on in the atmosphere. We got a stable wind field. We got sufficient wind shear. Wind barbs look good. We got some higher wind going in there. Not very spread out though, but we got high winds. We got supercell development, high supercell development, significant hail. Hydrograph looks very good actually. Got that big nice hooking structure right there, and then you got the storm structure following it to the northeast. It looks pretty good. I got a lot of moisture going up into the air. Got an increase in heat in there, which is going to further make that atmosphere even more unstable. You got 1790 in surface CAPE. So this is a yeah, this is all the ingredients essentially for having tornadoes roll out. I'm going to look a little bit further south, right on the line of Missouri and Arkansas, still getting the same exact thing. So if you look in different places and they're cooperating, you know what I mean? You've seen that big nice structure there in the hydrograph. You got moisture and heat going up into the atmosphere, significant supercell development, get over 2,000 in surface CAPE. So this could be the dangerous part of the storm, where you might get several tornadoes actually, that is going to be possible rolling through Arkansas and mid to lower Missouri. Let's take a look at northern Missouri up here and see what we're looking at. We're even getting that tornado threat in northern Missouri. So anywhere around that marginal and slight and enhanced risk on Sunday, there could be tornadoes forming up everywhere around that entire convection outlook. Now you're seeing that curvature in the wind right here, a little bit of that curve right there, and that's going to be a little bit more for that surface vortice to form out. You got some nice stable wind there. Got some bulk shear that is more than sufficient enough to get supercell spinning up. Almost 2,000 in surface cape right there, supercell development. It's a little bit lower on the scale, but definitely does not mean that supercells can't develop here. Got a nice kind of less broad kind of hooking into the hydrograph here. The hydrograph looks good in its structure though, and then some significant hail threat. Lower end tornado threat, but it's, you know, it's not zero. All right, so let's go to a different model so that we can take a look at it. We'll look at the high-res model for this frame as well. Let me see, what day is this? This is going up to 06Z hour of the 24th. So sometimes a high-res doesn't have the kind of time frames that the NAM can give you. It doesn't extend out as far. So we're looking at an earlier time frame in the high-res model. So let's look at FV3 here. I want to look at this region. Yeah. Well, kind of wish it was a little bit further to the east, but let's try looking at this one. This one might be better. All right, that one's better. All right, so that is the 06Z hour on the 25th where the high res left us off. As that kind of pushes out, then we start to get our first line of storms moving into the evening hours of the 24th. So that moves out, and there should be a line that's going to be moving in here. Might not extend that far. So now you're seeing these. So 23Z on the 24th, going into the overnight hours, then you're starting to see these little cells, these little individual cells popping up. So I'm going to look here, just kind of in the center of Missouri. Broken cap, got moisture, got heat going up into the atmosphere. LCL's dropping. Got stable wind field, significant supercell and hail development. Cape is at 1,374. Good looking hydrograph. So there is a tornado threat that is in Missouri at this time. Let's look at kind of northern Arkansas, just kind of get a generality of what the atmosphere is doing. So the atmosphere in northern Missouri at this time is starting to what is happening here is, just from looking at this, is that it's kind of the instability is forming right here. Okay, and as it forms, where you're getting those higher you get those warm temperatures, you're getting those that heat and that moisture, and then it starts to spread. It's kind of spreading like this. You know what I mean? And and as it spreads like that, then it's draping over the northern of Arkansas. So this is the central location where it looks like it's kind of breeding at, as it comes across this line from Kansas and Oklahoma. And as it gets in here, then it just kind of spreads. It just gets bigger and wider as it kind of moves east into these wetter conditions where you had a lot of that daytime heating that is further making the atmosphere more unstable. Then it just starts to spread, and it's just kind of widening out. So right now in northern Missouri with this hydrograph, as we're looking at it, you're getting a marginal tornado risk, but this is like this is in the process of that spread, where it's spreading into Arkansas. It's not fully there yet, but it's getting there. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the time where you got to start to prepare here in Arkansas, because they're already going to here in Missouri, they're already going to start having storms rolling out. and then the next frame. So this is the last frame that we have on FV3, and the FV3 is relatively a new model, but it's actually a very good, I think, a pretty accurate model. I do like it a lot. Alright, so then in the next frame between, we're looking at 23Z to the 00Z hour, going into the overnight. This is the overnight periods in where between Sunday and Monday, overnight Sunday to Monday, getting a nice thick stable wind field right here, a lot of wind shear. 985, not even 1,000 is surface cape, but definitely enough for storms to roll out some tornadoes. Got supercell development going on. Not very high supercell development, but it isn't zero either. So significant hail development as well. Hydrograph looks good. Nice structure in the hydrograph here. Got some classic supercell going on. Updraft looks good. So definitely kind of, I mean, I would say to me it looks like a lower end tornado threat, but it is a tornado threat. You know what I mean? It's not zero. All right, let's look at the southernmost kind of plains of this. Hydrograph's looking good. Downdraft and updraft's supportive. Got broken cap, heat and moisture. Then a little bit of, not much, but a little tiny curvature in that wind field, but a lot of wind shear. That's the thing that I'm paying attention to here. A lot of wind shear. Cape is lower in the southern regions. Wind barbs are spread out a little bit. So low end tornado threat. Now I'm going to look at these isolated cells right here, because when you get these little tiny isolated cells, there's a lot of concentration on them. So, and it seems like it kind of drops. Got a big cap though. I mean, that thing really breaks. You know what I mean? It's just how they're spread out right here, and you got a clear line right between them right here. It's a nice break on the caps. They really, really break up. Now I'm getting a little bit more of that curvature that's going on right here. So FE3 can't see past this frame, but after this, going into the early morning hours of Monday, that's when it's going to start to intensify. As it gets further east, this is going to reach further south and drape a line, and then there's going to be another line that's going to form behind this one later on in the morning hours. That's what we saw in the NAM model. Alright, so let's look at GEFS, and I want to look at, well, no, we'll go to GFS. And yeah, surface-based cape. That's what I want to look at. Okay, so we are at the same time frame that we were just looking at. Look at the cape. So we're getting 1,300, 1,200, over 1,000 joules of cape pretty much all over this area. If we go back in frames through the 24th, then you can see those spikes in cape right there, where you're getting over 2,000 in some of these areas in surface. This is surface-based cape. This is on the ground. So that just kind of goes to show you how much instability is on the ground at this time while this is happening. So that's a lot of instability. It starts to kick up. It starts to really jump up. It looks like 15Z hour. It starts to really jump up after that point as it swoops east as the storms progress along through Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, eastern Texas, and that cape doesn't go away and die down until the later day hours of Monday. It starts to taper off. Alright, let's go back to that frame right here, the 21st 21Z hour. That is the high point of that cape. Let's go to, wait, no. I want to look at Supercell Composite. Okay, so this is the Supercell Composite for this time frame. You can see that I'm going back in frames right here, but you can see that really kind of building up around the 15Z hour. It goes into the next frame, and then it just multiplies. It's just expanding out. So that's that instability that I was talking about as it widens out. You know what I mean? So right about at this time is where I clicked on Arkansas, and you looked at it, and it was kind of like that marginal tornado threat, you know what I mean? Very low end. And then the next frame, it just starts to swoop right into Arkansas, and it's widening out. It's just kind of spreading, you know, spreading. But yeah, a lot of Supercell Composite that's going in here with these higher numbers. And then as the day progresses on through Monday, then it starts to dissipate. So, all right. Storm relative helicity. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's go back to about the 15Z hour. All right, so those higher numbers of you can see these red shaded areas of storm relative helicity. And helicity is a measurement that is measured to attain how much punch that a storm has. How much energy is it drawing? You know what I mean? How much energy is in the atmosphere for a storm to really pack a punch. And that's kind of what we're seeing here in these dark red areas where these higher indices, these orange, and even some of the blue areas can give it enough, you know what I mean, to punch, you know, kind of a nice punch with some of these storms. So they can be fairly on the extreme side or the upper severe side sometimes with these storms as they roll out. And I mean, over here, that's, you know, you're getting higher indices of helicity right there. But a lot of times, that is what these storms usually pull from, and that's from the wind shear. You can see the wind shear pushing through here. And that's with the cold fronts, you know, that are moving through with the fronts and the outflow boundary lines that are ripping through here. Then you can start to see that, and as those fronts just kind of push through, you can see that wind and that cold front kind of swooping through there. And you can see a little bit of that swirl as it kind of moves through, and that cold is taking over. All right, so I just wanted to get a look at some of the data there and show you guys a little bit of that. We can go to Tropical Tidbits here, and let's go to the FE3 high-res model and see what we see here for, this is Friday, Saturday. Okay, so Saturday, you're already starting to get stuff kicking up. Tropical Tidbits shows a little bit of a different picture. Hydrograph doesn't look that impressive though right now. So let's go all the way into Sunday, where you start to have these storms roll out. This is going to be, it looks like earlier in the day. Yeah, so the cap tightens up. Get a little bit of that cap. Not a bad hooking in there in the hydrograph, but it's not really impressive. That's the first line of storms that kind of goes in there and then rolls away. And then after that line rolls away, this low moves in. I don't think it's going to let me go that far. 23. Okay, so that's when you're starting to see the line right here of storms that's kind of forming. So we're going to look just ahead of that. Yeah, so you got broken cap, heat and moisture. Same thing that we were pretty much seeing in pivotal weather. Good looking hydrograph. Cape over 1,000. MU cape is most unstable cape. That's over 1,000 right there. So the most unstable cape in that area at this time is going to be 1,000. But like I said, this is early in the event going into the overnight hours. So that instability is going to kind of crank up throughout the night, and it's gonna get worse, a little bit more unstable, and those storms are going to roll out throughout the night as it kind of moves in through Arkansas, and then behind this line, once it gets thicker, moves out of Missouri into the further east areas. You're going to have another line that pops up behind this low, and that is going to roll through as we saw in the NAM model through pivotal weather. All right, so that's the general outlook of what is going to happen on Sunday. So basic thesis here is have your families ready. If you are in Arkansas, if you were in Missouri, if you were in western Illinois, and any of these areas here, eastern Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, if you were in any of these areas in these warning zones, have your families prepared. You know what I mean? Prepare now, because the way I'm looking at it, this could be a horrible event, or it could be not that bad at all. And you can only have a few tornadoes that probably, you know what I mean, won't get up above, you know, solid EF2 range. You know what I mean? Or you could have F3s and possibly 4s. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things you just can't predict, you know, but the reason they have these warnings up here is because it could be bad, and that's what we're preparing you for. Get those families together, have a plan in place, get some supplies ready, and just be prepared before Sunday, and be weather aware. Pay attention to your weather stations and your forecasts from your local area, and have those warnings ready to go. You know what I mean? Pay attention to those warnings. Get your family someplace safe, you know, before this rolls out. This is going to be really cranking up in the early evening hours, and then through the overnight hours of the night. That's when it's really going to be at its peak, at its worst. All right, and then it won't roll out until probably about 4 in the morning on Monday. Then it'll start to taper off and start to dissipate. That's the hours that we're kind of looking at here. So I hope this video helped you guys. Stay safe. Please come back and watch if I have any updates going on in the next 2 days. I'm going to put them up here on live videos on Facebook. I also have them on my YouTube. Come back and check it out. Also, I mean, one guy that I watch all the time because he is one of my biggest influences. He's a very, very, very brilliant meteorologist. Is Aaron Tuttle. You can look him up on YouTube. He has live streams going on all the time through severe weather events. Sometimes he's got models and data and things that I don't have access to. He can show you some really interesting stuff. So definitely check him out on YouTube. His name is Aaron Tuttle. And he actually has a weather app that is fantastic using the FV3 model. It actually can predict tornadoes before they form. Check it out on his YouTube. He'll tell you about it. It is amazing. I can't remember what it's called, but I saw it on one of his YouTube videos. You guys got to get that thing, man. That thing is gold. So anyways, take care. Stay safe. Come back. Check out updates that I got going on. Thank you for watching, and try to have a great weekend.